Douglas Murray, don't let the facts get in the way of propaganda. It's 82% pass rate. Don't talk about the quality of education that the people in South Africa they are receiving. Don't talk about the quality of education that the young people are receiving in South Africa. The 30%, it's an embarrassment, but don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. They are talking about 82% pass rate.
The 360 experience with Thomas M.
Now, I see you're in Perth. You have been in South Africa in recent days. That's a country that is facing all sorts of dire challenges, from an extreme energy crisis to crime rates, really. We don't sort of see in the West rape and murder rates put the country as the third most crime-riddled in the world. Douglas, is there any hope for South Africa? What did you learn while you were there? Are they headed to Zimbabwe 2.0?
Well, it's a fascinating country, of course, and it's an extraordinary country. I've been there before, but not for a few years. And it's a country so rich in resources, and I don't just mean, mineral resources and that sort of thing, but extraordinarily rich in what we rather unpleasantly call in our era human resources. They have an enormous amount of potential in South Africa, and it has been wasted by the government in recent years, which has been so corrupt. I mean, so unbelievably corrupt on a scale which it just boggles the mind. It's a sort of corruption of a sort of Middle Eastern level. That's how good the leadership are at that. All the time, of course, it's fascinating. They do. One of the things I found most interesting was, of course, South Africa's government's been grandstanding on the international stage in recent months by taking Israel to the International Court of Justice for a charge of genocide they couldn't hold up. And of course they couldn't, because it's not true. But it's very interesting, whenever any government does something totally grandiose like that, you can always tell they're going to distract you. They're trying to distract you and particularly their people from things they're not doing. I said to audiences in South Africa.
But I honestly don't think that South Africans have been distracted, because I don't think South Africans actually care about what is happening between Israel and Palestine. I don't think average South Africans on the street, they care about South Africa taking Israel to the International Court of Justice. I think South Africans are so caught up in their own things that this whole distraction that ANC was trying to provide, it did not work. Because right now, no one is talking about the fact that ANC took Israel to the International Court of Justice. There is absolutely no one who's talking about it. So I know that the African National Congress wanted to grandstand, like Douglas said, that these people are simply grandstanding. You look at how the country is, you look at the fact that nothing is working in the country, you look at the fact that the same people that are grandstanding all over the world are the most corrupt people in the world. So this thing of theirs of taking Israel to court, it did not stick. Because South Africans are not paying attention to that. I don't think South Africans are going to vote for the ANC simply because ANC took Israel to court. I think that the South Africans are going to vote for the ANC mainly because of what the ANC says, because of the ANC rhetoric, because of the apartheid rhetoric, because of the African National Congress, what they have done since 1994, because of social grants. I think these are the issues that are going to push some people to vote for ANC, but not the fact that South Africa took Israel to court. Maybe there's a small minority of group that might actually say, yeah, let's vote for the African National Congress for taking Israel to court. But I don't think average people on the street, they actually care about South Africa taking Israel to court. If anything, the people in this country were quite upset that their country or the government was investing so much time, energy and effort into the matters that has nothing to do with South Africans. How can South Africa go out and say that Israel is committing genocide in Palestine, whereas the people are being slaughtered in South Africa in higher numbers? People are being slaughtered in South Africa each and every day. Scores and scores of people in this country, they've been slaughtered. So when South Africa went out and said that we are taking Israel to court because these people are committing quote unquote genocide, the first thing that people did was to look at what is happening in the country, that you people are not even protecting us. There are no borders in South Africa. The illegal immigrants can do as they please. The crime is totally out of control. The politicians are not being held accountable. So how can you guys invest so much time, energy, and effort into the matters that has nothing to do with us? If anything, South Africans wanted the South African government to now focus on the safety of its own people, because the people in South Africa, they are not safe. I don't care where you live in South Africa. You can live in the suburbs, you can live in the townships, you can live in informal settlements, you can live in the townships. It doesn't matter where you live in South Africa. You are not safe as a person. So when these people started speaking and talking about the safety of the people in Palestine, the first thing that South Africans did was to say, man, but we are not safe ourselves. We are not safe ourselves. So how can these people go out and say that they are going to try to fight for the people of Palestine? When are you going to fight for the people of South Africa? Do you remember when some of the politicians in South Africa said that we are going to fight for Israel, or we're going to fight for Palestine to have water and electricity, we're going to fight for the people of Palestine to have water and electricity? The people of South Africa, they did not take that statement very lightly. They said, how can you fight for the people of Palestine to have water and electricity, whereas the people in South Africa, they don't have water and electricity? So I think the stand of the ANC of trying to grandstand all over the world and pretending to be a holier than thou, it didn't work in South Africa. Clearly it didn't work abroad, because the people abroad, they simply look at South Africa and say, man, you have no influence. The African National Congress has no influence. No one respects this government of South Africa. So no one actually was taking South Africa serious. If they wanted South Africans to take them serious, even South Africans, they did not take them serious. So this whole stand of taking Israel to court because these people are committing genocide, if anything, it made South Africans reflect in what is happening in the country. And people say that, man, how can you invest so much time, energy, and effort into that matter, whereas the people in this country, they've been slaughtered?
You can always tell they're going to distract you. They're trying to distract you and particularly their people from things they're not doing. You know, I said to audiences in South Africa, it's that question of, you should look at the hand that the magician has that you're not meant to be looking at. And in the case of the South African government, the ANC, corrupt ANC government, they've presided over a period not just of this corruption, but, the lowest education standards in Africa, which, Somalis are better.
But they are talking about 82% pass rate. Douglas Murray, don't let the facts get in the way of propaganda. It's 82% pass rate. Don't talk about the quality of education that the people in South Africa, they are receiving. Don't talk about the quality of education that the young people are receiving in South Africa. The 30%, it's an embarrassment, but don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. They are talking about 82% pass rate. They don't mention the fact that in 12 years, 40% of children actually drop out. They don't talk about the fact that the children that were writing matric last year, 40% of them actually dropped out. They don't talk about that. They are talking about 82% pass rate. They are saying that the literacy levels in South Africa are up. So which literacy levels? Because studies have been conducted and it was actually found that an average child in South Africa, they cannot read or write. But Angie Motshekga is going on national television and she's talking about the literacy levels going up. So Douglas, please, man, please do not let the facts get in the way of propaganda. This is a propaganda of the ANC. Children are passing in South Africa and their literacy levels are going up. Man, South Africa, it's an embarrassment, man. It's an embarrassment. The fact that, man, our education system, man, it is the lowest in Africa. I think our education system is one of the lowest in the world. I don't think there's any country that can actually accept what the South African children are being subjected to. I don't think there's anyone with common sense in South Africa that can, not in South Africa, in the whole world, that can actually accept what the young people in this country have been subjected to.
Over a period not just of this corruption, but the lowest education standards in Africa, which Somalis are better educated than South Africans. They've got more than 50% youth unemployment, which everywhere I go when I notice that sort of thing, it's just the biggest tragedy. Young men in particular just hanging around with nothing to do.
And as a person, man, you look at the fact that the standard of education in South Africa, you look at the fact that many people in South Africa, especially young people, are not working in South Africa, then you sit back and you are like, Why would a government that always goes around and saying that they are prioritizing their people, why would that kind of government actually provide their children with the lowest standard of education? What is the purpose of ANC actually giving young people in this country 30%? What actually pushes them to go around and say that like young children in South Africa, they deserve this kind of standard? What is their purpose? Why are they doing that? Because everyone understands what is happening in South Africa. Everyone. I mean, like right now, look at these people. I mean, they are in Australia. They are laughing at us. They are laughing at us like, man, like who would actually do that? Who would actually do that? It's almost as if you say that the young people in South Africa, they do not even have the capabilities of working hard and passing by themselves. So you're simply going to give them the 30% lowest standard of education system. It is an insult to young people in this country by suggesting that these people cannot even work hard themselves and pass themselves. You cannot give these people a better education system because they will never pass. And these people, the same people who do that, they talk about Cuba, they talk about China and say that we can develop ourselves, we can be like China, South Africa can be like China. You know, this is the talking point of the ANC and the EFF, that South Africa can be like China. But you look at the young people in China, then you look at young people in South Africa, and you say that the young people in China and young people in South Africa is day and night. We are completely different. But they say that South Africa can be like China. How can South Africa be like China with this kind of education system? So who is benefiting what from this whole thing that is happening? That is the question that people are not talking about. Guys, you remember the other day when I was bashing black parents in South Africa for not caring about their education system that their children are being subjected to? You remember when I said that in the townships, people are working hard so that they can take their children to private private schools. They don't care about the schools that they have in their own communities. Our people, I will talk as a black person, the people in the townships, they don't care about the schools that we have in the townships. And I can say that we have a lot of schools. It's not like we don't have schools in the townships. We have a lot of schools. But parents are not paying attention to the kind of education their children have been fed. They don't care about the fact that there is no sports in the school. There is no debate. There is nothing in the schools. When the schools are closed, you will see the children roaming in the streets until the schools are open. This is what is happening in the townships. I'm not going to talk about white people. I'm not going to talk about the Afrikaners, because I know every time as a black person, when I'm trying to address the issues that are facing black people, some people will come and say, yeah, you are saying that because you are trying to provide cover for white people. No, I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about black people in the townships, because after all, we are a majority. For if anything has to change in South Africa, change will come from black people. If black people do not want change in South Africa, there will never be change in South Africa. That's why all the political parties in South Africa, they are trying to convince black people to vote different, because they know that if you can convince a good number of black people to actually vote different, the things are going to change in the country. So even if we look at the schools, man, the fact that the parents, especially in the townships, they don't care about the kind of education their children are being fed. They don't care about the fact that there are no extramural activities in the schools. They don't care about that. They don't care about that. The people are simply working hard so that they can take their children to schools that are predominantly white. And it doesn't have to be like that. It didn't have to be like that, because the black parents in the townships were supposed to fight for a good education. The black parents in the townships were supposed to say, man, there is no way we're going to allow our children to be subjected to this kind of nonsense. There is no way we're going to allow this school not to have sports, not to have any extramural activities. Our children are not doing anything. Our children are not participating in anything. And you look at the results of that, when you look at the teenage pregnancy, you look at the drug use, like all of these things, they stem from that. They stem from that. When the schools are closed, maybe let's say in December, because the schools are closed for something like a month and a half, many young people in the townships, they actually develop this habit of drinking, of smoking, because there is nothing that they are doing. There's nothing that they are doing. So it's almost as if black people in this country, they are happy about what is happening in the country. And I'm going to address black people specifically, because if we want change in South Africa, change will come from black people. If black people are not willing to change, then there is no change that we're going to witness in South Africa. So looking at this whole thing of education system and the standard of education, black people were supposed to stand up and say, no. Even in apartheid, we were not given this kind of education system. Even in apartheid, the standards were a bit higher. But if you listen to the comrades will actually convince you that the education system that people were receiving back in the days was actually lower. But when you actually do your research and trying to see, I remember my sister used to go to this high school. They had they had a lower grade and a higher grade, but the education system was quite good. But you look today at the education system, and even someone who finishes school in South Africa today, you are as good as uneducated. How crazy is that? People go to school, they finish matric, and after finishing matric, the same people, they cannot read or write. Who is benefiting? Who is benefiting, guys? Like, this is what I want to understand. Who is benefiting, and what kind of benefit are these people getting? Because this is treason.
You know, the lowest education standards in Africa, which, you know, I mean, Somalis are better educated than South Africans. They've got more than 50% youth unemployment, which everywhere I go, when I notice that sort of thing, it's just the biggest tragedy. Young men in particular just hanging around with nothing to do. It's unbelievable, appalling. Many of them have actually got degrees because they were told that was the way to do it. And they're in debt and they're unemployable because there aren't any jobs. These are the sorts of real world effects of misgoverning a country like the ANC has in recent years. There's an election coming up. It's not quite clear how it'll shake out, but I would hope that the South African public will vote for dramatic change of scene, because the ANC has so much goodwill in the 1990s in the country and internationally. And they've just spent it and spilt it in totally unforgivable ways.
And talking about the decrease, man, you know, this issue of decrease is quite painful, man. It's quite painful when you think about the decrease, the fact that today in South Africa, we have people who went to medical schools, man. Who would have thought that people would go to medical schools and qualify to be doctors and qualify to be nurses? But the same people are sitting at home doing nothing. The teachers are sitting at home doing nothing. And these are people who actually invested a lot of money in their education system. These people, they got loans so that they can get these degrees. But today they are in debt and they are not employable because there are no jobs in South Africa. So, guys, and the worst part is that South Africans are not going to vote for change. I guess that is the most painful thing about this whole thing, that South Africans are not going to vote for change. Because if you have to be realistic about what is happening in the country, man, you have to be realistic. South Africans are not going to vote for change. There is no agency amongst the South Africans to actually take the country and put it in the right direction. There is no agency in South Africa. People are simply playing identity politics and racial politics, and they think it's fun to play identity politics and racial politics. That's why I said that you see in South Africa, I mean, when you live in South Africa and when you are conscious enough to see what is happening, I mean, you live a very frustrated life. I remember someone saying that, Thomas, you look like a very angry young man. And I must say that I'm a very angry young man, because I look at what is happening and I look at how people's lives are being destroyed. I look at how all of these systems that are put in place, how they are destroying people's lives. And I'm like, man, this has to be the most frustrating thing ever. A lot of people are quite oblivious to what is happening in the country. I would like to think that these people are quite oblivious, because there is no way that this country can go in this direction and people still find it better to play racial politics, to play identity politics, instead of saying, guys, their country is drowning and we need to make a change. We need to make a change. And you speak with South Africans on the ground. I speak with the people on the ground every day. I live in the townships. So we always talk about these things, man. And there is no sense of eagerness to actually change what is happening in the country. People are not eager to say, like, man, like, you see what is happening in the country, man. We are not happy about it. People are not saying that. People are not saying that. And I think this is the most depressing thing ever. The fact that people are not willing to actually change. The fact that people are still willing to vote for the same governance that everyone can see that is corrupt and it's inept. Everyone in the world can see what the ANC is like. Everyone can see it, but South Africans. Everyone can see it, but South Africans. Right now, even the people who are skilled are leaving South Africans. People who have actually went to schools to study the things that we need in South Africa, they are leaving the country. The most skilled people in the country, they are leaving the country, and we need those skills to actually build South Africa. but there is no sense of agency in South Africa. So there is no sense of agency. People are not saying, guys, of course, we had the African National Congress. These people played an important role with the apartheid. Of course. These people have built people, RDPs, man, of course. But you have to look at their governance overall, man. You have to look at their governance and say, man, these people, as much as they go around and pretend like they've actually done something for the people of South Africa, but if you have to look at the fundamentals, these people have actually destroyed this country. They have destroyed this country, and there is no sense of agency to change what is happening in the country. And I think that is the most painful thing when you have to look at South Africa. That is the most painful thing when you look at the country. The fact that people are not willing to actually vote different. People are not willing to say that, guys, it is enough. It is enough. The people of this country are not saying it is enough.
And finally, I saw this piece in today's New York Post, a new poll from a non-profit think tank showing only 1 in 2 New Yorkers plans to...
You see, there's no sense of agency, man. There's no sense of agency, man. And I think this is the most frustrating thing. Like, it is so frustrating, man. It's frustrating. It is frustrating, man, because at this point, I don't think there is nothing that ANC can do to actually convince the people that, guys, we don't want to govern. I think the ANC has actually pulled every trick in the book to convince the people of this country that, guys, we don't want to govern. We don't want to govern. They've actually showed the people of this country that they don't want to govern. But it's just that the people of this country are still saying, no, we want to be governed by you. ANC is like, guys, we don't want to govern, man. We have destroyed everything. We have destroyed your life. We have destroyed your future. Your children are getting 30% education system. We have destroyed state-owned entities. You don't have water. You don't have electricity. There are no jobs in the country. Investors are leaving the country. No one is coming in to invest the country. Skilled people are leaving the country, man. Like, guys, we don't want to govern this country anymore. But the people of this country keep saying, no, we want you to govern over us. Guys, I don't know, man. Please tell me what you think on the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button. And the most important part, subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabaso. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
The 360 Experience with Thomas M.